This is lesson 7.3, solving by completing the square for Algebra 2. Before we start, again, we'll do a couple words and get some definitions so that the work is a little bit easier. So leading coefficient is the number in front of the highest powered term. So for example, if we were looking at the expression 3x squared plus 8x minus 12, the leading coefficient would be 3. X squared is the highest power and 3 is the number in front. All right, the next is completing the square. So completing the square, this is another method that you probably won't use a ton, but it is useful for getting things into vertex form. So if you need to get something into vertex form, this is a good skill to have. So this is basically forcing a non-factorable polynomial to factor into vertex form. Now we haven't talked about vertex form yet. We will do some more work with it, but vertex form looks like y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So this is vertex form. So using completing the square gets us an equation that has this form. And then the last term we have is the vertex. So the vertex is like the minimum or maximum of a parabola or the valley slash mountain. So if the a, meaning this a, if it's like minus a or like a negative number, we're going to end up with a maximum, because the parabola is going to open downward. If we end up with an a that's positive, or it's just like there's no plus sign out front, because you wouldn't write plus 6, but if it's just a positive number, we're going to end up with a valley. So maybe I should actually rewrite this just to keep it in order. If it's a minimum, we will have a valley first, okay, and if it's a maximum, we'll have a mountain. Okay, sorry, we're in good shape. So the form that the equation will take is, I'll give you guys a couple examples. So let's say we had, I don't know, y equals negative 2 times x minus 1 squared plus 7. Because this is a negative number, because this is negative, it opens down like that, and we will end up with a maximum. And the maximum is going to be at the vertex 1, 7 because of this and this. Again, it's minus h, so since it's minus 1, that means h must be 1. Now, on the other hand, if we had the equation like y equals 4 times x plus 3 squared plus 9, for example, because this number is positive, that means we have kind of a smiley, positive, smiley face parabola. It opens upward. And our vertex is going to be a minimum, and the vertex is going to be at negative 3, 9. And that's because right here we have a plus 3 instead of the original formula, which says minus 3. So that means we must have a negative 3, and then the plus 9, which gives us our y value. Okay? So the vertex, the I guess formula, if it's even a formula, is that the vertex is at h comma k. That's the big thing here. The vertex is hk. All right, so let's look at a couple examples. This first one takes us through step by step. It looks like a lot, but it's not as awful as it looks. So the first step is to take the coefficient of the x term, which is -8, and divide it by 2. You will always divide by 2. No matter the number, you always divide by 2. The second step is to square that. So step 2 is to take -4 squared, which is 16. Now, the third step is where students will mess up if they're going to. What you have to do is add that, meaning 16, between the x term and the original number. But if you add something, you also have to subtract it. You can't just arbitrarily change an equation. So if we do plus 16, we need to do minus 16, okay? So what that looks like is if our original equation is x squared minus 8x, we're going to do plus 16. You always do the plus first. Then we're going to bring our minus 12 down. And to compensate for this, we need to do minus 16. So these two offset one another. So then step 4 is to factor the polynomial into a perfect square. So what we do here, and this is actually kind of cool, it's going to end up, we want two numbers that multiply to 16 and add to -8. It will always be x and then whatever came here. So we're going to put this -4 right there, squared, and then we are going to go minus 28, and that's because -12 and -16 makes, -28. So that's where that comes from, okay? And then the last part, or I guess there's one little thing it says here. Number 5 says it should now be written in vertex form, which it is. X minus h squared plus, or well, in this case, minus k. So cool. And then step 6, it says if there's a leading coefficient that's different than 1. So here, if this was like a 6 or a 2 or a 3, we would need to do a different step. I'll do that on some other examples, but we're pretty much done here. I just want you guys to also find the vertex. So for this one, the vertex is h, k. All right, I'm going to pause this video and I'll start a new one for the last couple examples.